Okay, here we go. The Capaldi era of Doctor Who is finally here and we're diving into it all. We'll look at the characterisation of the 12th Doctor, Clara's new and improved storyline, the issues with Danny Pink, and why one of the worst episodes of the show may be the funniest. Plus, Eggy Moon, Dueling Spoon, and what the hell were you thinking, Moffat, you absolute loon? This is Doctor Who Series 8, an underrated mess. There's so much to say about Deep Breath. Honestly, I could probably make a whole video about it. First of all, straight out the gate, this is one of the best, maybe the best, opening images in the show. It's just brilliant. Immediately, this is unmistakably Doctor Who. A T-Rex in the Thames right by Big Ben. That is perfect. Not only is it exciting and fun, but it's something that most other shows can't do. You're not getting this in Stranger Things or Game of Thrones, this is Doctor Who madness at its best. The iconography of the UK mixed with the whimsy of time travel. This is how you do it, and it's something that has been missing from the show for quite a few years now. Because while so many shows and streaming services are trying to compete with current trends and popular IP, actually doing something different, having your own unapologetic original style is what makes you stand out. I actually think the whole pre-title sequence is pretty well handled. There's a few too many jokes sprinkled throughout for my liking, however Capaldi delivers them with such energy that they still kind of work. I think the reintroduction of the Paternoster gang is pretty good, we'll talk more about them later, but really what sells this moment is the frantic madness of it all. A T-Rex spitting out the TARDIS covered in gunk, Jenna Coleman looking like she's been in a washing machine, Peter Capaldi running around, it all works. It's got a good energy to it, throwing the audience into the adventure right from the off. And this energy that's created in the beginning comes and goes throughout the entire episode, and that's why I find Deep Breath so interesting. It basically has all the series' high points and low points crammed into a feature-length story. Because when Deep Breath works, it excels, telling a great creepy Victorian tale with good scares and decent jokes mixed in. However, at times this shifts, and we're left with scenes that meander, with jokes that don't land, and ridiculous comedy sound effects like this. And you can see it in this scene straight after the opening titles. There's some lovely bits here, the Doctor going crazy, Clara wanting to change him back, Vastra's disappointment in her, they're all lovely. I actually adore the Doctor talking dinosaur because it isn't played for laughs. It's sad and treated incredibly seriously, and for me that's why it works over 11 talking baby or horse. Because it's a wacky concept already, so turning it on its head and taking it seriously is just a lovely juxtaposition. It also disarms an audience. When you tell them that even the most silly of concepts can be heartfelt and moving, they don't know what to expect, and that's nice. The issue is that this scene is 8 pages long and ends with Strax having one joke after another, each one becoming increasingly more cringeworthy. And look, you'll know by now that Strax isn't my favourite character, but I'm not saying he shouldn't be in this episode, just not this scene. I always think every scene should enter late and leave early, and yet here we stay right up until the end, and it's unnecessary. Strax can crack some jokes later on, just let this moment sit. And it's an issue that pops up throughout the first half of the episode. Either scenes outstay their welcome, or they could just be cut entirely. This scene here with Strax is painfully dull, and it just stops the episode in its tracks. And I think this is another Blue Peter competition moment, I think so, but this could have been done better. Or just cut it. Life's unfair, and kids need to learn that. This scene here is another moment that could have been left on the cutting room floor. It goes on, Jenny thinking Vastra is painting her, Vastra telling Clara to take her clothes off. It becomes a sitcom in an episode that doesn't need to be. Because around these moments, there's absolute gold. The dinosaur bursting into flames and the scene that takes place just after near the Thames is wonderful. Immediately we can see just how captivating Capaldi is on screen. He brings a gravitas to the role, and it's there even in these moments before his Doctor is fully formed. It's really Capaldi's energy along with Jenna Coleman's performance of grief and longing that makes this first half so watchable. The stuff around it never matches up to what they're bringing to the table, which is a shame. Except this. This is genius. One more time, I love it, one more time. I think one of the biggest issues I have with the first half of this story is the Paternoster gang themselves, and I don't mean their performances or the way they're written in this episode specifically, but as overall characters in the show. Because ever since their first appearance in A Good Man Goes to War, they've never really been detailed characters, but instead a handy plot device to be used in the first half of episodes to get the story rolling. If we look at the Snowmen, Crimson Horror and The Name of the Doctor, you'll notice their role in the story is practically the same in each one. In the first half, they have to get the Doctor into the story. They are the ones that get him where the plot needs him to be. In the Snowmen, they're looking after him and eventually help Clara get him off the cloud. Crimson Horror, they're there to get him out of the captivity, and in Name of the Doctor, they set up Trenzalore, bring River into the story, and then are used as the reason why the Doctor has to go to Trenzalore to save his friends. And once this is all done, they're kinda pointless for the rest of the episode. The Snowmen very quickly becomes about Victoria and Clara and the Doctor. Crimson Horror becomes a pretty standard companion and Doctor adventure once they've both been saved, and the name of the Doctor barely uses the gang once the Doctor arrives at Trenzalore. To be honest, they mainly just stand around, occasionally to offer exposition.
Simeon is attacking his entire timeline. He's dying all at once.
And even in The Good Man Goes to War, the roles are reversed, but it's the same effect. Instead, this time the Doctor summons them to be part of his army, but once he has that army, the plot can continue forward and they're barely used. And look, there's nothing wrong with using characters to move the plot along, that's kinda how stories work. But it becomes very noticeable when each time they're featured in an episode, the same plot beats are repeated. And unfortunately, in Deep Breath, it's the same. They're there to look after the Doctor, to help Clara find the Doctor, but once this is done, once the two leads meet in the restaurant, the real plot can begin and their role in the story becomes non-existent. I don't feel like we learn any more about them, and this is true for nearly all of their appearances. They stay the same, never changing or shifting. The leader, the housemaid, and the comedy potato. That's the gimmick, and unfortunately there's not much underneath it. I will say though, they would have been perfect for a spin-off. A lizard, her partner, and their potato pet solving alien mysteries in Victorian London. Dear God, that's a good elevator pitch. I also think we could have gotten more characterful moments from them, exploring that dynamic a little more. I want to know what it's like for Vastra and Strax to be so far from home, so alone in this world. How does Jenny feel having to hide so much of her life? There's so many storylines to explore and it's a shame that it never happened. And I know I've been saying that the show needs to stop doing returning characters and cameos, but these actually are kind of perfect to bring back if a showrunner wanted to. Because they're just friends of the Doctor. Introduce them as that and the story can continue, and you don't need to have seen any of their past adventures to understand them. Not saying I would bring them back, and if I did, Strax would be slaughtered in battle, but I can see why someone may be tempted. But yeah, they bring down the first half of Deep Breath, which is a shame because the second half is Doctor Who at its best. As soon as Clara and the Doctor meet in the restaurant, the whole episode goes up a gear with the tension and threat rising in each scene. There's still some comedy, but it doesn't undercut the moment. It also serves a purpose more than just making the audience laugh. It gives us this new dynamic between our leads. The back and forth banter, slightly harsh, less obviously playful humour is something that will continue throughout the next two seasons, and it's captured perfectly here. We also get a lovely bit of horror. The moment they realise none of the diners are eating is wonderful. The simplicity of them all just robotically standing up when they try to leave is incredibly effective. This whole scene is just written, performed and directed perfectly. The whole aesthetic of the second half is incredibly effective, this steampunk Victorian lair with rusting old robots. It all feels incredibly seedy and grim, and it's this kind of style that I think Doctor Who should embrace more. This is how you do horror for a family audience. It feels creepy even when nothing horrifying is happening. And the second half just proves how important one good villain can be. Deep Breath isn't exactly action-packed. It has the dinosaur, it has the groundbreaking stunts. But it also has a lot of talking, many scenes where the dialogue moves the story along. However, it never feels boring. Here, every scene is active, the promise of danger is completely there, meaning that even when the Doctor and Clara have a little natter, it doesn't feel like the story comes to a halt to allow this. The villains, the robots, are simple. We've seen them before in The Girl in the Fireplace, and yet, due to them being old and broken and this time religious, they're incredibly intriguing. Add in the stilted walks and dead-looking eyes, and you've got yourself a perfectly entertaining Doctor Who threat. This whole sequence is so good, the tension builds, there's so much character work throughout with the Doctor abandoning Clara. Jenna Coleman's performance in this scene where she has to hold her breath is just brilliant. Honestly, she's one of the best actors we've ever had in the show, and this little moment proves it. She just nails it. It's so well performed, and here Ben Wheatley's directing just amplifies the moment. It almost makes you as the viewer hold your breath along with the character, and that's a very hard thing to achieve. I kind of flip-flop between loving or disliking Clara's storyline in this one. On one hand, I'm like, you know better than any companion that the Doctor changes his face, get over it. And on the other hand, I kind of like how she struggles with it even knowing all his other faces. It kind of adds something to it. She's lost her Doctor. And I think what they do with it in the story is clever. She's not just sad that she's lost the pretty bow tie man, but she's scared. The Doctor is acting in ways 11 never did, and I think that's what makes it. He abandons her. I'm not quite sure why he does it, but it leads to this brilliant scene, so I'm fucking glad he does. Capaldi's revealing costume is brilliant, Vastra and Jenny coming to fight is fun, and of course we get the wonderful sparring between the 12th Doctor and the half-faced man. The dialogue here is lovely. I know Moffat has said in the past that he doesn't think too much about writing for different versions of the Doctor because they're all the same character, but I don't think he'd have given 11 a scene like this. This feels very new for the Moffat era, very grown up in a way. I love how this scene in the episode plays with the darkness of the Doctor without ever overindulging in it. I've seen a lot of fans say they want a darker Doctor, but that shouldn't ever be the main trait of the character. The darkness, in my opinion, should come from his other traits, and we see it through 12's arrogance and determination and no-nonsense approach that he's had throughout the whole story. This isn't a whimsical man, this is not the madman in a box anymore. He's an old traveller with stern eyes and little patience. The ambiguous ending of the half-faced man's demise is incredibly well structured. Obviously, the debate is whether the Doctor pushed him or if he jumped, but I like that either way the Doctor is responsible for his death. He either physically pushed him or manipulated him into jumping, and that's bloody dark. The question isn't whether the Doctor killed him. He did, there's no denying that. Instead, the question is if the Doctor walked away with his questionable morals intact. The last major scene to talk about from Deep Breath is obviously the Matt Smith cameo at the end. I quite like it. I've seen quite a few people complain about it, and I don't know why. Like, lighten up. Just because you're fucking friends don't call you. I think it's handled incredibly well, and it feels very characterful for Clara. It doesn't feel cheap, which it could have easily felt if handled badly, and weirdly, it's earned. The whole episode is Clara struggling with the Doctor's new appearance, and she obviously needs some guidance. I think it's nice. It's nice. Lighten the fuck up. It's nice. Also, it doesn't overshadow Capaldi at all. He really gets to play this sadness, this longing for his friend to accept him. It's incredibly moving. I love it. I like it. I like it. Obviously, we also have to talk about Missy, but we'll do that later. Is Deep Breath the best opening episode for a new Doctor? No. But it's not bad, just a bit clunky in the first half. It just doesn't need to be this long. Shave 10-15 minutes off it and it could have been perfect, but it's good and definitely underrated. The first half isn't bad enough to take away from how perfect the second act is. Right, let's talk about the Angry Scot. In June 2013, Matt Smith announced that he would be leaving the show that Christmas, starting several weeks of speculation of who would be cast as the time-travelling Time Lord. The usual names popped up as always. Chris Marshall was desperately waiting by the phone, hoping and praying that maybe this was his time. It wasn't. He'd be a bad choice. Stop fan casting this man. I'm sure he's lovely, but no. There was quite a big deal about this casting announcement, with the BBC showing a special live programme called Doctor Who Live, The Next Doctor. I don't know if they had some budget left over after the 50th or whatnot, but it's quite cool that this happened. The show was hosted by Zoe Ball, and it featured cast members talking about the show's history before finally revealing Peter Capaldi as the 12th Doctor. It was nice, especially when you think about how unceremonious Shooty's announcement was. I'm pretty sure it was just an Instagram post, and that kinda sucks. At least Jodie got the stroll through the woods. However, I do think making a big deal out of 12's casting was clever. I know fans don't like to think about it much, but casting an older Doctor was a bit of a risk. The public had become used to seeing a young, sprightly lad in the role, a romantic, a Casanova type, and the one thing people don't like is change. And I think age is the one thing that could change the role. Race and gender, not at all really. It might open up some story possibilities for the writers, but the character barely shifts. But age could have an effect. That young action hero that had become the character throughout the 2000s was changing. Also, the show was kind of building up to the perfect jumping off point if viewers wanted to leave the show. With a show that can run and run with no concrete finale in sight, audiences will choose when they're done with it, when the story ends for them. And with Series 7 ending with the 50th and 11th regeneration, it kinda leads to a nice place to exit if you want to. Especially if you've been enjoying the show less over the last few seasons. Remember, the Moffat era was divisive. So I think building the intrigue and importance around this casting was kinda genius. Make people excited, make it feel like a big moment for the show. Don't turn off because look what's coming next. That's clever. Because although I think people don't like change, they also really don't like feeling like they're missing out. I actually think Peter Capaldi's casting came at the exact right time for the show. After two young, quite romantic, flirty Doctors in a row, a third would have cemented that as the character moving forward. And that would have been a massive shame, because what's the point in having a lead character that can constantly change if they're always staying the same? Also, Capaldi was a great get for the show. A familiar face with fans from his multiple projects, but not super famous that it feels weird seeing him in the Tardis. I always think there's a fine line to balance when casting a name, and they got it spot on here. Also, he's a massive fan of the show. What a brilliant ambassador to have on board during the 50th anniversary year. Plus, he can fucking act. All round it's good casting. They did good. The 12th Doctor also allows Moffat to take the character in a new direction, and I think it really suits his writing style. Moffat can be quite fantastical. He likes the poetry and whimsical storytelling that comes along with time travel. However, he also likes his darkness, his tea time horror. So having a more mature Doctor seemed to make his writing more mature too. It feels a little more grown up in places, a little more dramatic. The whimsy is still there, but it's less fairy tale, less the girl who waited impossible girl things, and instead more sombre, more characterful arcs that feel a little more stripped back than those of the Matt Smith era. It's a welcome change, and it makes sense. As the audience is growing up, so is the show. It's nice, and it feels well earned and not too sudden. And that's not me saying this series is really serious, it starts with a T-Rex in the Thames for Christ's sake. He balances it well. I adore that the 12th Doctor is basically a walking contradiction. He's serious and grumpy and no nonsense, and yet also a fucking gremlin man who does the weirdest things for the sake of it. He knows he's an arsehole, he knows it, and he doesn't really care, and I think that's a fun side to the character. I love that his humour is incredibly dark, he can be quite cutting, but there's also different shades to it. When he's making fun of Clara, he never feels cruel, but instead friendly teasing that borders on flirting but never so obvious. However, with the others, his cutting comments, his bluntness, while still played off as jokes, have so much meaning behind them. He knows what he's saying, he's intended to wound or piss someone off. It's just very characterful, and it's an interesting trait that the show plays with throughout the entire season. Also, 12 isn't immediately lovable, and that's great. It's kind of easy to make a character that everyone thinks is good, a nice person, but flawed characters, they're hard to write. Because if you make them too flawed, then people don't like them. It's a balancing act that writers get wrong time and time again, myself included. With the 12th Doctor, we're taken on a journey. The audience are very much placed in Clara's position. We have to learn to like him, to trust him and understand him, and as she grows fonder towards him, so do we. I think this slow progression is a major reason why so many people love this incarnation of the character, because it feels so natural. We're not immediately told he's kind, romantic, caring or compassionate. We learn it, bit by bit over the course of the season, and to be honest, this whole era, 12 goes on a journey. And of course, the major arc that takes audiences on the journey is the Am I a Good Man storyline. This is first brought up in episode 2, Into the Dalek, and although it rarely mentioned again throughout, it's always there hanging over every episode. Because throughout the series, the Doctor makes questionable decisions, leaving Clara and kill the moon. We'll get onto that episode in a bit. His whole demeanour in The Mummy and the Orient Express, his treatment of Danny and many of the supporting characters throughout the series. He's the lead, and he may be playing the role of the good guy, but fundamentally, is he good? I think that's such a clever direction to take the character, and I think it's handled beautifully throughout. The audience are treated as adults, nothing is too obvious, we're not beaten over the head with it. Well, occasionally we are, but it's set up at the beginning of the series and then we go on that journey alongside our leads. Lovely, lovely stuff. God, I'm being very complimentary. Let's change that. I think sometimes they go a bit off course. I don't like how he's written in Robot of Sherwood. I think they try too hard to make him the comical jealous guy and it doesn't work for me at all. Also, it's the only time I get whiplash this season. 2 episodes of him being the grumpy arse, still funny but in his own unique way, and then bam, he's fighting with spoons and acting like a child who's had too much sugar. And if I'm honest, he's acting dumb. He feels dumb in this one, and I don't like it when that happens. This dumbness also returns a bit in The Caretaker. I think it's slightly less infuriating, but it's still there, and it's just not needed. He just doesn't feel as natural like he does in the rest of the series. And it's not on Capaldi's acting, he's given it his all, it's the material he's working with that lets him down at times. However, even in the episodes where his characterisation is messy, the dynamic between him and Clara excels. Peter Capaldi and Jenna Coleman's chemistry is just so watchable. They both have this energy on screen that is captivating, and you can tell they're having so much fun working with each other. Now I know people have their problems with Clara, we'll get onto that later, but I think these two together is magical. They really add something unique to the show. It's a Doctor-companion relationship that New Who hasn't explored before. There's obviously the friendship and the fun adventures stuff, that's a given, but it's more complex than that. I think there's a very real, very mature romantic element, not lovey-dovey giggling teenagers, but a connection that both characters seem almost scared of at times. There's so much left unsaid between them, so much audiences can read into if they like, and I think that's a really fun addition to the pairing. There's also the element of wanting to impress, and it goes both ways. Clara doesn't just want the Doctor to see her as amazing, but instead as his equal. She desperately wants to be like him. It's almost a rivalry she has with herself, and obviously this will build and build towards her ending in season 9. And it's kind of the perfect dynamic for the 12th Doctor, because Peter Capaldi is obviously older than the Doctors we've recently had at this point, so there's a new dynamic to explore. People often say they wish we got more of the teacher-student mentor stuff like we did with Bill, but I think it's here for the most part with Clara. She's learning from him, he's teaching her to be more like the Doctor, and when she succeeds, when she proves herself, it almost scares him. He kind of knows it's going too far, that this pairing is dangerous, but out of love, may that be friendship or other, he can't let go. And for Clara, when she doesn't get the praise she craved, it only pushes her further towards her downfall. It's lovely stuff. Let's talk about Clara more. Clara Oswald is Steven Moffat's Rose Tyler. RTD obviously loved Rose Tyler, and Steven obviously adored Clara. And both characters have proven to be divisive in different ways. Rose is definitely liked more, especially with casual viewers, however a lot of fans do find her annoying and dislike the teenage romance between her and the 10th Doctor. Meanwhile, Clara gets a lot of flack for being too important at times, however her fans fucking love her. Divisive in different ways, but divisive nonetheless. And okay, time to be honest, I used to dislike Clara Oswald. I used to find her importance annoying. I didn't like her arc, I didn't like her. Until last year. Last year I did a big old rewatch and suddenly it was like something just clicked. I suddenly got it. I understood the dynamic, the story, and more than that, I felt it. I had an actual emotional connection to it, which was missing when I'd previously watched or rewatched those episodes. Firstly, Jenna Coleman has always been amazing. I never have had an issue with her in the role. She's fucking great and pictures everything perfectly. She's also incredibly pretty. I think she's a very nice lady. And I still stand by the fact that she has a very poor introduction to the series. I do not like Clara in Series 7. Honestly, she's just a bit flat. The Impossible Girl arc is kinda her whole thing, and it's like the show doesn't quite know what to do with her in that series. She's a nanny, then she's a teacher, she has a family, but like Amy Pond, she never fucking calls them. Her dynamic with the 11th Doctor isn't that interesting to me. Jenna and Matt have great chemistry, but I think the show relies too heavily on them being two good-looking people having a bit of a flirt. Now, this isn't to say that Clara doesn't have any good moments in Series 7, I just think they're few and far between, and I don't connect to her as a character. I just don't really care about anything they do that much. The whole jumping into the Doctor's time stream still bores me today like it did when it first aired. However, it's like the show finally found what they wanted Clara to be in Series 8. They finally get her. Making her a teacher in the 50th turned out to be a brilliant decision because suddenly she has a place that roots her. She has commitment, she has colleagues and a life outside of the TARDIS that she actually cares about. Her job makes her a person of authority, and yet the Doctor has more authority during the adventures, something she challenges constantly. Also, a lot of the sexy sitcom stuff is gone. Instead, her humour feels a lot more real and characterful. It's no longer, haha, they're actually naked in this scene, and instead it's very dialogue heavy. She's quick-witted and can hold her own against the Doctor. And it's funny, because as soon as the impossible mystery is solved, she suddenly has more agency in the show. She feels like a real character with real emotions and wants and needs and fears. She has a proper arc. My issue with the Impossible Girl stuff is that it isn't really an arc, it's a catchphrase. That storyline doesn't allow her to really grow. I think she would have chucked herself into the time stream in Cold War if she had to. It's not something that naturally builds. But in Series 8, Clara goes on an arc that will continue until her final appearance in Series 9. There's no catchphrase or slogan, her arc is completely character based, and I think that's the right thing. The show's about time travel, monsters and aliens, so to contrast that whimsy and wildness, you need a storyline that's rooted in something real. It's that juxtaposition that makes the show so much fun. And it just allows Jenna Coleman to play to her strengths. If you have someone that talented as one of your leads, you gotta give them stuff to get their teeth into, and this series does that so well. We get moments of pure bravery, pure fear, anger, romance, grief, comedy, it's all there, and it makes watching her character so compelling. Sometimes I do think the show indulges too much in its love for the character. We'll talk about Listen in a bit, but one of the things that annoys me about the episode is just how much of it surrounds Clara and her relationship with Danny. I just think it gets in the way of the more fun, creepy stuff that's going on earlier in the episode. It's one of those stories where I find the premise more interesting than the finished product, and I'm pretty sure I'm in the minority there, and that's fine. I like my own company. I also will never understand why her face is in the opening titles of Death in Heaven. It's so obvious that she's lying to the Sideman to keep her alive. Surely no one actually thought that was going to be a big twist and she was in fact the Doctor. Surely, please, don't be thick, you're better than that. However, my only real issue with Clara this series is I don't really believe the relationship between her and Danny Pink. It's fine, I guess it works, but I don't feel it. I have no real emotional connection to it, and I don't quite buy the chemistry. I think it's partly due to us getting very little scenes between the two just being themselves as a couple. There's always some kind of shenanigans involved. Weirdly, the most believable part of the storyline is Clara's grief in Dark Water. That two-parter is kind of the only time I actually care about the relationship. For the rest of the series, it's very much a subplot, both in terms of the episode storylines and Clara's own emotional arc. And I've seen some people online say we're not meant to root for them as a couple. I don't quite agree with that, but either way, that's not really the point. Even if we as the audience aren't meant to be in love with it, we should still understand and believe that those two characters care and love each other, and personally, I don't see it. It's lacking for me. Both in the soft, delicate romance, but also in the passion and sex. There's no heat. I think it needs that. It's such a fast romance that I need to believe that they fancy the arse of each other. It kinda needs to feel sexy, and I'm not saying make it bloody R-rated, but you can create that passionate atmosphere without being explicit. Another issue is the character of Danny Pink himself, but we'll get onto that later. First, let's dive into a Dalek. Series 8 really understands the Monster of the Week format. Every episode, although not all bangers, has its own unique style and tone, exploring different genres without it feeling too jarring. Into the Dalek is a very middle of the road episode in my opinion. It has some fun concepts and the performances are pretty good for the most part, but it never grabs me in a way I think a Dalek episode should. The fear just isn't there, and it's a shame. I'm just not a fan of Moffat's Dalek writing, and that's okay, I forgive him. Capaldi is on top form and Jenna Coleman continues to impress as Clara, and once again it's their chemistry that really drives this episode forward. The premise of the Doctor having to treat a Dalek is fun, although the antibodies just aren't as good a threat as the Daleks themselves, and the Dalek action is lacking in this one for me. There's some great bits towards the end, and people finally get exterminated in the Moffat era. Hurrah, but still. If I'm honest, I think the reason I'm a bit harsh on this one is actually due to my opinions on the other Dalek stories from Steven Moffat's tenure. I love a Dalek. There's always a bit of excitement when they return. However, as I haven't liked their appearances under Moffat by the time we get to Into the Dalek, I need it to be a banger. I'm just craving a great Dalek story where they feel like this impossible threat, and it never really happens. And I don't need them to be the big bads at the end of each season like the RTD era. I'm not saying I want them invading Earth every time they pop up, but I do still want to feel that menace, and I just don't feel it when it's Moffat writing for them. But that's not me saying that this one doesn't have any good moments. I think some of it is really strong. It sets up the Am I a Good Man arc really nicely. It sets up the season's soldier subplot pretty well. It continues to characterise the 12th Doctor really well as well. You can see they're continuing to explore his traits and develop him as a lead role, and it feels very natural following on from Deep Breath. A lot of the humour works as well. But stop saying well. The humour really works. Again, it's the Doctor's bluntness that I really enjoy, especially this line.
Yeah, my Clara, she can, so I don't have to.
And I think the concept of a Dalek wanting to kill all the other Daleks is great. I don't know if it's ever properly realised, I do think they could have had more fun with it, but it's a fun idea that leads to some nice action scenes at the end. The worst part of the episode is definitely this bit.
You are a good Dalek.
It's basically the same scene from Season 1's Dalek, but without any of the bite. It's the charity shop version. The line, "You would make a good Dalek," feels so cutting. It comes after Nine has completely lost it and shown his anger and rage. It basically destroys the Doctor in 6 simple words. "You are a good Dalek" just doesn't have the same effect because it's just said without much payoff. I've always thought if you really want to do this that the Dalek should say "You are a good man" after the Doctor has saved it. The fact that a Dalek, the Doctor's arch enemy, the creature fueled by hate, can so easily call the Doctor a good man, but Clara, the person he cares about the most, can't bring herself to say it, hits harder in my opinion. There's something interesting to explore there. It feels a bit different than just deleting a word from a line in Dalek. But yeah, Into the Dalek is a fine episode. I can see why some people would really enjoy it. For me, it's okay. It does what it needs to, but it doesn't grab me or excite me like I want it to. It's better than this. Oh, it's better than this. Robot of Sherwood is an episode of Doctor Who that exists. It's... here we go. Firstly, where is the fucking S on robot? There's more than one. Robots of Sherwood sounds better. Get a grip, put an S at the end. It honestly annoys me more than it should. I find it ridiculously infuriating. If I was to be nice about this episode, I would call it messy, but if I'm being honest, I'd call it painful. I just don't like it. It's so incredibly different in tone to the previous 2 episodes, and not in a fun way. I like it when this show plays with different styles, genres and stuff. That's good. But I also think there should still be consistency between the characters and the overall feeling that series is trying to create. This episode feels like it's in the wrong season. It feels like it should be in Series 7. It's got Manic Matt Smith written all over it. The concept of the episode, or at least the concept that it's trying to explore, is quite interesting. Was Robin Hood real? Was this character from a legendary tale a real person? I think that's fun. My roommates don't. We had a big discussion about this the other night, but they can go fuck themselves. The major issue with the episode is it never does anything interesting with any of its ideas. It's so consumed with the idea of being the funny one that every scene is littered with bad gags and punchlines that it forgets to actually explore anything meaningful about legends and old folktales. And there are so many bad gags in this. My god, the dynamic between the Doctor and Robin Hood just grinds my gears. It is so over the top. Every line feels like it's been written to an inch of its life. One joke isn't enough. Here's another, and another, and another. Their constant childish squabbling isn't entertaining for me because it's so obvious you can predict every next line of dialogue. I think Capaldi does his best with it, but it's just so different to his previous characterization that it makes me dislike the Doctor in this, and not in a fun way. I just find him annoying. I also don't understand why Clara has such little agency in this. This story only starts because she wants to meet Robin Hood, and yet she barely does anything within the episode once the story starts. She's basically a schoolgirl with a crush on Robin, then she gets harassed, knocked out, and then spends the rest of the story just standing on the sidelines watching the men around her bicker, fight, and save the day. And look, I don't need Clara to have a big part in every single episode. It just feels so weird how little she does here when this is the adventure she picked. I also hate that the Doctor and Robin's fractured relationship basically revolves around them fighting for Clara's attention and affection. They're like 2 jealous schoolboys fighting their way through puberty. This wouldn't work for Matt Smith's Doctor, it would still be bad, but it would make more sense for the way he's characterised towards the end of his tenure. This is not the same man as this. And for me, it's not complicated, flawed character writing, it's just inconsistent. Unfortunately, other parts of the episode fall flat for me too. The Merry Men are nothing. I genuinely believe they should have been cut. I think it would have been more interesting if the real Robin Hood was actually a very lonely man and that we invented the Merry Men in the story because otherwise we thought it would be too sad. I don't want to pat myself on the back too much, but I think that's quite good. Ben Miller is kind of wasted in the role of the sheriff. Again, he does his best with the material, but there's just not much for him to really sink his teeth into. It feels obvious, a very paint-by-numbers villain, and I think if you're going to do that, especially during the Robin Hood episode, then it needs to be camped up to pantomime levels, and it's just not. I do think the design of the robots are fun. I love they shoot lasers from their face. That's a nice little detail. But yeah, this episode leaves me completely cold. Also, it's directed by an insane man. There are so many directing decisions I just do not understand, and it makes the episode look incredibly cheap. This episode gives me a headache. I'm sorry, Gators. I still love the unquiet end. Listen. I might get some hate for this one. Let's find out. I think Listen is good. However, I don't believe it's Moffat's masterpiece like some other fans do. The concept of the episode is great. What if there was a creature that had perfected hiding? Would we ever know it exists? That's a wonderful premise, and the episode wastes no time getting to it. It's also a premise that allows for some good old-fashioned Doctor Who spooks, which the episode pulls off extremely well. It's a more grown-up outing for the show, which is very much welcome after the childish Robert of Sherwood. Good old Robert. And it allows Peter Capaldi to once again show off his acting chops. He's just got such a wonderful voice, and this episode gives him the opportunity to really indulge in his own performance. The monologues, the nursery rhyme, all of it just shows off how much gravitas and command he has as a performer.
Out they'll come a-slithering from underneath the bed.
There are definitely some standout scenes throughout Listen. The whole orphanage section is brilliant from beginning to end. The simplicity of the red blanket creature is perfectly realised on screen. The build-up is excellent. The moment the bed dips when Clara and Rupert are underneath never fails to send a shiver down my spine. It's this simple yet effective filmmaking that I adore. And this is what makes me laugh when we talk so much about budget when it comes to the show. You don't need the megabucks to make an effective, creepy story. Now, I know how TV works. This episode definitely isn't cheap. This scene isn't. Once you take into account the cast, the crew, the equipment, the sets, everything, most casual viewers would probably get a shock at how much this sequence actually costs. Telly isn't cheap. And this is why there's so much chat at the moment about distributions and all that kind of stuff, because it's like what broadcasters are giving to TV shows is very limited. Sometimes it's only making up like 15% of the show's actual budget. That's why they need a distributor, that's why they need to make deals, blah blah blah. We're seeing it all over the place at the moment. However, Listen does prove that you don't need to spend a fortune on special effects and CGI. This isn't House of the Dragon or Marvel, and it never should be. It's the blue box show that sometimes can make a red blanket the scariest thing in the universe. The Moth also does a great job at keeping pretty much everything incredibly ambiguous. Reveal too much and the whole episode loses its power, so I love that nearly everything that could possibly be a creature is given a more normal alternative answer. It's up to us as viewers to decide if there really is something hiding in the dark, and I like that. I do quickly want to ask, has anyone ever had the hand grabbing your ankle dream? Please do let me know in the comments. I have never had it. Everyone I've asked has said they've never had it, but this episode makes it out like it's the most common dream in the world. So if so, have you had it? Am I still waiting for it? Could it get me tonight? Unfortunately for me, the episode never reaches the heights of the orphanage scene again. It still has a few lovely moments, especially between the Doctor and Clara at the end of the universe, but the fear factor definitely does dip, and I really could not give 3 shits about Orson as a character. Maybe I can give 1 or 2 shits, but not 3. And although I think the ending is written and performed incredibly well, plus is underscored by one of Murray's most beautiful pieces of music, it doesn't enchant me as much as I know it does for some other fans. Personally, I just don't care about the Doctor's past, his childhood. I never really want to see it, and I know we don't really see anything, but it's just not for me. Also, I find it a bit of a letdown. I want more creatures, something in the dark stuff. Clara giving him a broken toy doesn't feel as exciting as the premise originally was. And this isn't a nitpick, this is just confusion, and I'm probably misunderstood it, but shouldn't it be a slightly bigger deal that they landed on Gallifrey? I just think as the Doctor is trying to get to his home planet, Clara would eventually tell him she's been there. Also, is this bit not time locked anymore? Because obviously this is way before the Time War, but I didn't realise they could. I don't know. I'm self-employed trying to earn enough money to stay in London. I've got enough things to worry about than bloody Gallifrey. But there is one more major reason why I struggle with certain elements of Listen. It's time we spoke about Danny Pink. Danny Pink is a new recurring character for Season 8. Danny works at Coal Hill School alongside Clara, and very quickly the two start a relationship that spans the entire season. Danny Pink is a straight no-nonsense soldier man. He's so straight that he won't even look both ways, which eventually leads to his untimely death. Danny is first introduced in episode 2's Into the Dalek. We first meet him having a bit of a shout at children, asking, "What are you, children?" It's a weird introduction, but hey, he's an army man. They love a shout. Then, within the next scene, he becomes Hugh Grant from every 90s rom-com ever made, as he tries and fails to flirt/get to know with the lovable Clara Oswald. It's so rom-com coded that he even slams his head on the desk because he's just that unlucky in love. And this is my issue with Danny's character. He's always only one thing at a time. He's angry soldier man, or loveless dork, or guilt-ridden teacher, etc. Now all of these mixed together in a character is interesting. There's a complicated person to explore who is ridden with guilt but also protective of his past. He wants to open up and move on and find love. All that's fine, a complex flawed character, perfect. Unfortunately, that's not what we get, because he's only ever the thing the moment needs him to be. He'll be angry, and then he'll be sad. Then he'll be Hugh Grant, back to angry. Oh, little horny now, calm it down. Pissed off, upset, the emotions, the feelings, they don't mix. They don't stay or linger past the line of dialogue or the scene. It robs him of being a complicated character, because he's actually one-dimensional. The things change a lot, but it's only ever one emotion or one reaction at a time. For example, if we take the end scene from Kill the Moon, you'll see just how much Jenna Coleman gets to play. Clara isn't just angry, she's upset, she's heartbroken and disappointed in her friend. She's also scared, worried and saying stuff before she even thinks. It's many different emotions all happening at once, and it's why the scene feels so raw and real. The restaurant scenes in Listen don't have this dynamic. It's a joke, sitcom-like romantic comedy, and then angry. There's not much else happening at this moment. He's leaning in, invading her personal space, he's pissed off and then he leaves. I don't feel anything else. There's no real hurt or pain, no disappointment that the date with the pretty woman's gone wrong. It's all quite stilted. And I will say, I honestly do not know if it's a writing problem or an acting problem. I would say a stronger actor would probably be able to play more within the scenes. They do feel quite restricted at times, but that could also just be the directing notes he's being given. Either way, it's how I feel whenever we go back to Danny Pink's character. And due to this, I struggle to get invested in Clara and Danny's relationship because I'm spending most of the time wondering what she really sees in him. Even later on in the series, in the god-awful In the Forest of the Night, Danny doesn't really get to do much. He's good with kids. Okay. And what? Maybe that's harsh. I don't know. It's actually the final two-parter where I start liking the character, mainly because the relationship between him and Clara is given something interesting to play with. The concept is good, which then forces the characters to act in new, interesting ways. And that's not to say that everything about Danny's arc is bad up until the final. I think his sparring with the Doctor in the Caretaker is pretty good, and I enjoy how he calls the Doctor out for basically being a hypocrite. He sees the Doctor as a soldier and more, and I think that's a really cool dynamic. I also can understand Danny later on in the series. Clara is constantly lying to him and the relationship really isn't going to work, but for me to really feel sorry for him, I need to connect with him earlier on in the episodes, and I don't. He calls Clara out for lying far too early in the season. He tells her that on their first date. Well, of course she is. No one's open and honest completely on a first date. It just makes him slightly unlikable. So to bring this back to Listen, God, I love a tangent. It's why I struggle with the episode, because this episode's main job is to really cement that romantic relationship. We need to root for the date to go well, and I just don't. Because I don't warm to his character, and I think the relationship is kind of doomed from the very beginning. There's nothing really to root for. And then so much of the rest of the episode revolves around Danny, and again, I don't care enough for it to really grab me. I'm not invested in the relationship to care that they have a whole family later on in life. Also, they don't, do they? Because, well... I don't have much to say about Time Heist. I think it's fun. It's got a good cast. Yeah, Keely Hawes is pretty wasted. It's not the greatest role, but she puts everything into it. But I think the setup is nice. It looks pretty good. I adore the Teller. My god, that's a great design. I wish he was in it more, but I'm being picky. I like the big slug bloke. Just the perfect bloke. It has to be said, the episode definitely falls apart at the end. I can do without the lovey-dovey shit walking into the sunset. That's far too twee for my liking. I would actually love it if we never get another misunderstood, there's actually two creatures in love ending ever again. I hate them. They're twee, they're naff, they're predictable. If you're not planning on changing it and putting a new spin on it, just don't do it, because I genuinely couldn't care less. But I like the whole brain soup scene, that's good. I think Jonathan Bailey's fun, I think it's a good time. A proper mid-season Monster of the Week episode. Also, for the most part, its pacing is amazing. It moves super fast. That's why the ending scene almost slams the brakes on. You can feel it, because everything else is so quick and zany, and then boom, boring. But until then, it's a great timey adventure, and is quite underrated in my opinion. Soup. The Caretaker is probably the most middle of the road a Doctor Who episode can be. It's fine. It basically ticks all of the boxes of a Doctor Who episode without really adding much to it. I tend to struggle with most Gareth Roberts scripts for two reasons. Firstly, they are very hammy, very sitcom, and as an audience you can feel it trying to be zany and wacky and look how weird and crazy this show is. Secondly, and this comes into the comedy stuff, but he usually writes the Doctor as a fucking idiot. He dumbs him down so much to suit his humour, and personally I think that's a bit lazy. You can do the funny one, that's fine, but the Doctor being so dumb or silly or annoying doesn't entertain me, it just makes me switch off. Also, I don't know why Gareth Roberts seems obsessed with trapping or ditching a villain. In the Lodger, the threat is upstairs and it's barely seen. Closing time, the Cybermen stay down in the fucking basement. Here, the cool, fun robot gets zapped away for most of the episode. Just let me spend time with the villain, please. Because the Blitzer looks really cool, it's a fun design, but as a threat, it's lacking. We see it kill one person and then it just kind of scuttles about the school for 40 minutes. Where's the tension? Where's the threat? Where's the horrific slaughter of the Year 9 assembly? It's fun that Courtney is just another supporting character this season. She's not the best character, she's pretty annoying, but I do think it's a good bit of continuity that runs throughout the first half of season 8. I do wish the Doctor was a little softer with her. I adore how 12 is written to be really good with children most of the time, so him telling her to go shoplift just feels a bit out of character. It's a messy episode, it's fine, it's better than this. The moon's an egg, guys. The moon's a fucking egg. It's an egg.
The moon's an egg.
Where the hell do I start with this one? It's bad. It's very bad. It's not good. It's the opposite. It's bad. There's so much to talk about in this one. The dreadful pro-life allegory, the ridiculously bad science behind it, and we'll get to that very soon. But first, take that away for a moment. It's just kind of boring. When this episode isn't being problematic, it's being dull, and that's kind of the worst thing a Doctor Who can be. It can be cheap, it can be silly, it can be too overly complicated for its own good at times, but it should never, ever be dull. The episode starts with the Doctor taking Clara and Courtney to the moon. There's a few bits before this, but this is really where the actual story begins. Once they arrive, the Doctor very quickly notices something's wrong with the moon's gravity. So far, so okay. It could be fun. However, very quickly these scenes begin to drag, with tedious dialogue that refuses to grip you. As the story continues, we meet these spider-like bacteria. They've given a few moments on screen, but their presence barely has any effect. Spiders are grim. Big spiders, fucking horrific. I should want to stamp them to death. However, I couldn't care less. There's no creepiness, no grimness. They almost look too clean, and the episode rarely tries to do anything with them. We get one actual scene of action before quickly moving on. They're basically a background threat. They're merely there so people can't complain that there's no monster in the episode. But the problems really begin to arise once we're told that the moon is an egg.
The moon's an egg.
Doctor Who is a show about a time-travelling alien who has two hearts and can change his whole appearance through regeneration. He travels in a police telephone box that's bigger on the inside, there's aliens and monsters, and the whole thing is basically ridiculous. And that ridiculousness is part of the fun. However, an audience can only suspend their disbelief so far, and Eggy Moon is where I have to draw the line. And there's a few reasons for this, but the main one is consistency. For audiences to suspend their disbelief, the story, and the world that story is based in, has to be consistent. For example, people can accept dragons and ice zombies easily in Game of Thrones, but as soon as characters start spawning around the map like video game characters, people call it out. They say it's unrealistic. And that's because it is. It goes against the information that audiences were previously told in the show. If you've watched people travel around for 6 whole seasons, those characters can't just start magically appearing wherever and whenever they're needed towards the end of the story. The same goes for this episode. Firstly, the moon has featured a hell of a lot throughout the show's history. We've been there quite a few times. So it just seems far too big of a revelation to suddenly throw on us. Like every time they've been there, they're just running around on a big egg. That's too dumb for me. Secondly, and probably the main reason it all feels too stupid, is because it's treated like the most serious thing of all time. Doctor Who can be silly, it's one of its charms. Sometimes it's very serious and it looks at the human psyche, and other times it's a tongue-in-cheek spoof on classic fictional tropes. The moon being an egg would usually be one of those tongue-in-cheek moments, a thing the Doctor might say that we never know if he's telling the truth or not. However, in Kill the Moon, it is taken so seriously, so earnestly, seemingly oblivious to the stupidity of it, that the nonsenseness of it all feels like a fault rather than a quirk. I think this is why so many people have issues with the factually incorrect science throughout the episode. Give me a big green killing machine and I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. However, give me an egg moon with a poorly thought out pro-life allegory slapped on top and I'll give you my attention, but not my imagination. And I should say that Peter Harness has said that any pro-life, pro-choice debate throughout the episode was not intentional and instead he wanted to tell a story about people's fear of the unknown. Now, personally, I don't know how you could write this script and not notice, but I'm also not saying he's lying. However, to not mention it in this video would be insane, because it's there, it's written all over it. And perhaps calling it a debate is far too kind, because it's not really. Hermione Norris's character is portrayed to be in the wrong pretty much throughout the whole second half of the episode. They even play some spooky dramatic music over some of her lines when she talks about killing the creature. And by the end of the episode, she is shown to have been in the wrong. Everything is fine and she would have been evil for going along with her plan. You see the problem? You see the issue? We're told she doesn't have children, we're told Clara wants children, we even get this line.
You cannot blame a baby for kicking.
The allegory is all over the script and it's incredibly heavy-handed and quite honestly, fucking preachy. And the whole pro-choice thing is completely ignored. Earth makes its choice. They turn off their lights, but Clara ignores that choice. That voice goes completely against it and is thanked and congratulated at the end. Eventually the egg hatches, the creature lays an egg that looks bigger than the creature itself, and done. Bad episode over. And weirdly, a good episode then begins. Because the last 4 or 5 minutes of Kill the Moon is incredibly gripping. The argument between Clara and the Doctor isn't just one of my favourite scenes of the series, but one of my favourite scenes from the entire Moffat era. To see the Doctor-companion dynamic be challenged in this way is incredibly gripping. The script is razor sharp, the performances from both are insanely good. Jenna Coleman in this whole episode is top form, to be honest. She's kind of the saving grace of the whole thing. I love this tension, this friction between the pair. It goes so much further than most Doctor-companion relationships ever go, and it's just good drama. Sod it being a family sci-fi show for a bit, this is just good telly.
Beautiful piece of television.
And I just don't understand why this wonderful scene isn't in a better episode, because you can get to this point between the characters in a different way and it would still have the same effect. And it's not just this scene, the little moment between Clara and Danny is actually really nice too, simple yet effective. It feels like the whole episode only exists for these moments, and it's a shame because this moment deserves to be in a better story, it deserves to be praised more than it is. It's wonderful, it's so impactful, and it sets up the rest of the series incredibly nicely. Speaking of, because believe it or not I'm bored of moaning now, let's talk about Jamie. Sometimes a writer just comes along and gets it. Jamie Mathieson writes 2 episodes back to back for this series and both delivered a thrills, chills, and please like and subscribe so I can one day afford a summer house in Beverly Hills. Basically, both stories have everything I want from a Doctor Who adventure. They've got good monsters, great character driven scenes, a playfulness that suits both the theme and tone of the story. He's just bloody good. Starting with Mummy on the Orient Express, this episode takes place sometime after the Doctor and Clara's bust up at the end of Kill the Moon. They are on one final adventure, the last hurrah as they call it, a nice trip to end on and say goodbye. This is a really lovely setup, it feels really natural and very in character for both of them. One gripe I do have, and this isn't with the episode at all, but more with the series as a whole, I wish we got something in between Kill the Moon and this. Personally, drop one of the weaker outings from the episode count, probably Robot of Sherwood, and give me a Doctor-light adventure on Earth that takes place once Clara is stormed out of the Tardis. Not only would this allow the breakup storyline to breathe a little, but it would also mean we get more Danny and Clara moments, allowing for their relationship to take the spotlight, which may have helped their romance feel a little more natural. Again, not a gripe with this episode, just a personal gripe with Moffat himself. The absolute bastard. Mummy on the Orient Express is a standard Doctor Who episode executed masterfully. It has all the basics you need. The Doctor and companion arrive in a fun, interesting setting, there's shenanigans afoot, a great monster and threat, side characters that feel real and well developed for the little screen time they have. It's all there and more. It's like Jamie came along and went, watch me, this is how you do it. Because although some of the show's best stories are the more experimental episodes, you don't need to reinvent the wheel every week. Doctor Who has a great format already, all you need is a writer to come along and use that format to their advantage. The setting for this episode is perfect. Immediately it's intriguing and eye-catching and it pulls you in as a viewer. It also wastes no time showing us the monster. The teaser before the credit puts it front and centre. We've been promised a mummy on the Orient Express and that promise is delivered within the first few seconds. If you've watched any of my previous videos, you'll know that a promise a show makes to an audience is one of my most important things when it comes to writing, and you better have a bloody good reason if you're going to break that trust. The gimmick of the episode works incredibly well and is a lot of fun, and when I say gimmick, I don't mean that as a bad thing. Gimmicks can be really good and a useful tool if used well, and here it's very effective. The countdown clock in the corner of the screen is a perfect way to up the tension. I also adore the scene where we barely see any of the attack, but the clock just counts down anyway. We don't know where the creature is and who's about to die, and that's just really great. It invests you in the story. As I mentioned earlier, the supporting cast are all really interesting in this one too. Frank Skinner is having the time of his life being in Doctor Who, and it's just joyful to watch. Perkins is just such a nice little character, and I would have happily had him stay on as the Doctor's handyman. I also think Professor Morehouse and Captain Quell are equally enjoyable characters. Although the casting of main characters is obviously incredibly important, so is the side one-off characters. You need actors that will bring a certain personality to their small role, and both these performers do that with ease. Maisie is another wonderful character. The scene with her and Clara stuck in the room talking about the Doctor is one of my favourites of the episode. However, other than the Foretold, that is genuinely one of my favourite monsters of the series, it's really the Doctor and Clara's dynamic that shines in this episode. There's so much that's left unsaid, so much they're almost scared of saying or omitting to the other. It adds this lovely, almost sexual tension between them. It's more passionate and fiery than anything we get to see between Clara and Danny. Seeing this relationship completely fractured, both sad and awkwardly fumbling through this final adventure, is just a wonderful thing to explore. I adore how they both very obviously don't want it to end, and yet neither can find the right words to express that. It's just a great character writing. Capaldi is amazing in this one. I've heard a lot of people say this is the episode where he finally feels like the Doctor, and though I understand where that's coming from, I don't completely agree. I think that character was there already in previous episodes. If I'm honest, I think it's possible that maybe this is the episode where most people just warmed up to this new direction of the character, but either way, he's great. Jamie Mathieson uses that blunt directness of 12 that has been in the previous stories to really shine a light on how this version of the Time Lord goes about saving the day. Where other incarnations of the character might have stopped to make sure everyone feels safe and hopeful, the 12th Doctor is more interested in keeping as many people alive as possible and is seemingly unfazed if that means there's a few casualties along the way. The Doctor may certainly be the hero of the story, but whether he's a good man or not is still up for debate. Quick note, and I say quick, but look at the length of this video, nothing is quick anymore. When researching for this video, I'd looked up a few reviews for Mummy on the Orient Express because I was interested if critics agreed with the majority of the fan base that this one is a banger. And although yeah, they mostly gave great reviews, quite a few, including The Guardian, criticised the ending of the Foretold story, and personally, that's nuts to me. I adore that he's this soldier that's been butchered into being a weapon, a man who just needs the war to finally end. Not only does it relate to the soldier arc that is running throughout the entire season, but it's just a lovely ending that, while humanising the creature and asking us to sympathise with it, doesn't take away from the threat and the scares that came before the reveal. You can still watch this episode even knowing the ending and feel that chill as he stalks his targets down the train carriage. That sad and slow salute at the end is actually pretty moving, and after such a dark and deadly episode, it's okay to have the smallest bit of lightness at the end. And if that wasn't enough, he then goes on to write Flatline. I fucking love Flatline. It's fast paced, it's got great action moments, the characters are fun, once again it allows Jenna Coleman and Peter Capaldi to be playful within their roles. And this is such an important thing that people rarely talk about, but when I studied clown, we learnt so much about playfulness and finding the game within a scene, and it's so true. As soon as there's a game or element of play, everything becomes more interesting. Here, the game is simple. Clara has to be the Doctor, and this allows both performers to really indulge in the gimmick to give performances they wouldn't usually be able to. Clara is the leader and the Doctor is the companion. And although this might sound like a basic setup, it is surrounded by so much fun and imaginative ideas while still also delivering the darker edge that I love within the show. Jamie just fucking gets it. What I love about the whole shrinking TARDIS plot is just how family friendly the sci-fi is. It's something that an 8-year-old and their 88-year-old Nana can enjoy together. It's comical, it's intriguing, I adore that we get to see Peter Capaldi nearly put his back out trying to get into the prop, it's just good. Mathieson also seems to understand the importance of splitting up the Doctor and the companion as early as possible. I don't think every episode needs to do this, but it is a good way of ensuring that both have something to do during the plot. It makes them both active players within the story, something other episodes have struggled with. I can see some people who find Clara too important finding this episode annoying, but there's a difference here. She's not the most important person ever. She's not meeting every Doctor in his time stream. Here, she's just a normal human who has to do her best to imitate her brave and intelligent friend. It's a story that would easily fall apart if it didn't have an actor with Jenna Coleman's talent leading it. Capaldi once again proves why he's the best. When alone on set with no one to bounce off, it's very easy to accidentally overcompensate with a bigger, more theatrical performance. However, he gives a very natural, very believable performance here as 12. He's so fucking watchable. Once again we are gifted with another fun and freaky villain, this time in the form of the Boneless, a race from a two-dimensional universe. Their actual plan is never really revealed, and I find this incredibly refreshing. This ambiguity adds to their threat. I adore how the episode balances its horror tones with some really natural comedic moments. The dialogue here doesn't feel like jokes. It doesn't feel like sitcom levels of setup and punchlines. Instead, they're just talking and they happen to be funny in the moment, and that is my favourite kind of comedy. And then we're also given some wonderful bit of slapstick with the Doctor walking the TARDIS like the Addams Family. Just incredibly funny visual and is shot and performed perfectly. The supporting cast is also very good. I don't find any of the characters as interesting or gripping as those in Mummy or the Orient Express, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Riggsy is quite likeable, Fenton is a fun, unlikable antagonist, even if he does drift into pantomime levels of evil at times, and the train driver, I don't know his name, but god he seems like a jolly bloke. I like him. The one major criticism of the episode is the resolution. It is very much a point and click of the Sonic. Now I've said it before, but the sonic screwdriver is a gift to a writer but a curse to storytelling. If you need to open doors or scan a computer, perfect. Anything else and you're in dangerous territory. Now this video is long enough and I'm scared to go on any more tangents, but I will do a whole video on the sonic screwdriver problem for writers another day, but for now let's just stay with Flatline. At the end, the Doctor banishes the boneless with his Sonic. It's actually a very good scene with what I would call the 12th Doctor's first proper, or at least first memorable speech.
The man that stops the monsters.
If only more writers would remember that. Monsters. You need monsters. I think why the Sonic use doesn't annoy me as much as others is due to how many obstacles that are placed in the Doctor and Clara's way before this moment. Also, I think the speech, the effects, the music all work together to hide just how easy and kinda cheating this resolution is, but I guess after 2 back-to-back classics, I think Jamie's probably allowed an easy ending. The final moments between the Doctor and Clara are beautifully written. It expands on the "Am I a good man" speech, but also Clara's arc of becoming too much like the Doctor. I really enjoy this storyline now I'm older. I didn't when I was a grumpy teen, but I didn't really enjoy anything much back then. I just think it's nice to have this grown-up arc and give it to a companion, especially after an era that was very whimsical and fairy tale in its approach, both stylistically and thematically. Okay, that's Jamie done. The problem with this show is that when it gets really good, you begin to let your guard down. You have faith that one of your favourite shows is spoiling you with amazing stories and would never do anything to hurt you. You feel safe, comfortable, loved almost. And that's when the arseholes attack. This is without a doubt one of my least favourite Doctor Who episodes ever. For one, it has none of the things I usually look forward to in the show. It has no good monster, no real threat. Don't tell me the threat is the sunbeam stuff. It's not scary and you can shove it up your ass. It doesn't have a fun cast of characters apart from some of the worst child actors to ever grace the screen, and it doesn't have any action of any kind. But that's okay, that's alright, not all episodes have that stuff and they can still be great, as long as they're doing something unique for a reason. However, this episode fumbles all its other stuff too. We get a lovely scene between the Doctor and Clara, more on that in a bit, but apart from those 2 minutes, the character work is pretty bloody dull. You can really feel that this is the penultimate episode before the 2-part finale. The relationships don't change. We don't move forward with the dynamic between the Tardis team and Danny. Everything feels very static, in place and waiting for the final. And if you're going to ditch the monsters, there better be something else fun to take its place, and here there's not. London being taken over by a forest is a fun visual. This image just before the opening credit is great, but one fun visual and concept isn't enough to fill up a 45-minute runtime. It has to go somewhere, and it just doesn't. The episode consists of multiple different scenes with multiple different characters standing around talking, all asking the same questions and pulling the same gaping expressions. There's a wolf at one point, don't worry, nothing happens with it. There's a tiger at one point, he has epilepsy and leaves. It's all very ploddy. And then there's Maeve.
She's on medication.
Right, what's that for?
She's had an emotional trauma.
Christ. She sounds vulnerable.
Maeve is a vulnerable kid.
Yeah, I guess that.
She's on medication.
Yeah, we know, he just...
The child is barely functioning.
Yeah, he said that. We get it.
She's very vulnerable.
Yeah.
Can't eat nuts. Got an allergy.
Right, one fucking problem at a time, please. Basically, in the Forest of the Night's message is, if you hear voices, don't take your medication and instead listen to them. Listen and learn and do what they say, which was not the best message in the world. Quite fucking dangerous, to be honest. Please take your meds. Like, that's insane, isn't it? Insane for any show, let alone a family show. Like, if you had kids on medication watching this, you may have had some really awkward conversations afterwards. Because the lead character just told them not to take those medically prescribed pills. A lead character called the Doctor. Just, how did no one go, oh, this one's a bit dodgy. Oh, let's rewrite this. Also, look at her, she's a menace to society. Everything about this episode is either dull or shocking for all the wrong reasons. And there's a few moments where it could have gone the other way. There's tiny little nuggets within the script that were just missed. At the beginning of the episode, the kids are having a sleepover at a museum, and that sounds like a better episode. Could be fun, could be quite cheap if needed, and could do some Night at the Museum stuff. But no, trees, tons of trees. Trees. Like I said, there is one scene that is genuinely good in this, and it's when Clara sends the Doctor away. It's really well performed, and it's the one moment that feels real and genuine. Clara telling the Doctor she doesn't want to be the last of her kind is actually quite moving. I love the Doctor using her words from Kill the Moon as a reason why he should stay. It's all just very lovely, and again the chemistry between both actors just shines. It's a chemistry that I don't think's been matched in the show since. Why do 2 of the worst episodes have 2 of the best scenes? What happened? And lastly, because I'll be honest, I don't want to talk about this one much more, but I can't not mention the whole missing sister subplot. Throughout the episode, we're told that Maeve has a sister that's gone missing. Apparently, it's really affected her.
Maeve is a vulnerable kid. She's on medication. She's had an emotional trauma.
We're reminded about this missing sister over and over again during the course of the story. And yet, it never becomes important during the actual story. It has no relevance to any of the trees. The Doctor doesn't offer to help find her sister is just gone. Nowhere to be found. Until the end. Because her missing sister that has traumatised Maeve, she's on medication, she's vulnerable, bless her. She's just in a bush. She's in a fucking bush. They would have found her if they just put the bins out. And this is the end of the episode. She's just back. Annabelle's back. The Katy Perry lookalike is very happy about it. End of episode. What a waste of fucking time. Insane. Insane. I genuinely believe this may be one of the worst episodes of Doctor Who, and yet one of the funniest. It's so bad. It is so bad. Why? She's just in a bush. I don't know if this is controversial or not, but for me, this is one of the best scripts Moffat has ever written for the show. If I had to sum up Dark Water in one word, it would be atmospheric. Every scene is dripping in this relentless darkness, this constant building dread that is drip-fed throughout the entire runtime. Even when there's moments of softness, the jokes don't take away from the tone that's been set, but instead offer a tiny bit of much needed lightness before forcing us back into the dark. At the very beginning, Moffat pulls the rug from the audience, throwing them immediately in at the deep end. Unlike most finales that start off slow, building towards a cliffhanger, Dark Water offers its first major twist before the titles even roll. Danny is dead. Just as Clara is about to open up to him, Danny is struck down by a moving car. I will say that this hits me more for the shock factor than any kind of emotional connection. If Danny had been built up better throughout the series, this opening would have been even more effective, but that doesn't take away from just how ballsy this opening is. The following scene is just a masterclass in character conflict. I love how Moffat just allows this scene to build, the tension growing and growing, with the scene only really ending once the tension has nowhere else to go. I adore how the control switches between Clara and the Doctor throughout. Both of them are out of their depth, and it makes the audience feel very unsettled. It's rare that we don't know where something is going. Because, like I said before, Doctor Who has a format, a formula that a lot of writers follow, and although this is a great thing, it does mean that some stories become slightly predictable. Tardis lands, monster introduced, monster defeated, Tardis goes, rinse and repeat, please like and subscribe, share and hype, Tardis lands, etc. Dark Water basically says, fuck the formula, and this puts us as the viewer completely on edge before the actual plot even begins, because this is all set up, but it's kinda electric. These two characters who rely and depend on each other so much are suddenly sparring in a way that we could never have imagined. Clara is willing to lock the Doctor out of the TARDIS for good. Her grief has completely overtaken her. This is a wonderful portrayal of grief as well, because it really does change you when you lose someone. You almost lose yourself for a bit, and this is played perfectly here. And amazingly, the reveal that it's all a dream doesn't feel like a cop-out. This could have easily been disappointing. It was all a dream is one of the worst tropes to ever infest fiction. It's everywhere and usually shite. And that's because it usually means that everything we just witnessed didn't happen. It doesn't matter, it was all pointless. Everyone's safe and good night. Here, however, that's not the case. Yes, none of the TARDIS keys burned, that didn't happen, but Clara doing it, that reckless, hurting side of herself being shown, that happened, and she can't take that back. The Doctor and Clara's relationship has just gone up a gear. Because then, in a few words, the Doctor tells Clara and tells us just how much she means to him, just how much he really, truly loves her.
Do you think I care for you so little that betraying me would make a difference?
The codependent relationship is so bad that even her threatening to take the TARDIS away from him isn't enough for him to let her go. That's good character writing. It's complicated, effective, and incredibly emotive. God, I just love good writing. Can you tell? I know it sounds like I'm gushing, and yeah, to be honest, I am, but I'm just so passionate about writing that works, writing that hits. I love it. I fucking love it. After 12's declaration of love, we travel to the Skeleton Aquarium, while also popping in on Dead Danny's first day in the afterlife. It's impressive how even though so much is happening in this, it never feels cluttered. This episode is incredibly well paced, with every scene given just enough room to breathe without it feeling like Moffat's indulging too much in his own creations. Everything is here for the story and the story alone, and it's quite refreshing, because Moffat, he likes to indulge sometimes. He's an indulgent man. I bet he loves a Ferrero Rocher. Dark Water's biggest strength is how serious it takes its subject matter. There's none of the Moffat's tongue-in-cheekness. This one is unapologetically dark. The whole "don't cremate me" twist is one of the show's bleakest moments. I adore it. It's pushing that family-friendly horror to the fullest. A few viewers even complained the boring arseholes. This reveal is just horrific.
Don't cremate me. Don't cremate me.
There is one.
Also, because I haven't seen this mentioned a lot, but that is a lovely bit of voice acting. If this performance had been bad, it would have killed the entire moment, so thank God they got that casting right. And I love how unsubtle it is. There's no keeping it ambiguous to not scare the kids too much. Nope, this is fully just people feel cremations. That's a kind of horror that would have probably sent a shiver down a lot of the adult spines. It's just brilliant. I have my issues with Moffat's writing at times. His style isn't always my cup of tea, but when he gets it right, he is a mesmerising storyteller. I also love the Cybermen reveal. I love how it's teased through the visuals and the music. It's not subtle at all, and that's what makes it fun. It's a proper dose of campness thrown into the macabre. This is just such a good Cyberman story. I know they're barely in it, but harvesting the dead is such a cool concept. They're built up really well as a threat. It makes you incredibly excited as an audience member to see more of them in the next part. And of course, because we've got to talk about her, I've put it off for far too long. Let's dive into the wonderfully weird world of Missy. Missy is first introduced in a wonderfully weird scene at the end of Deep Breath and pops up briefly throughout the entire series. You know the shtick by now. Doctor Who loves her. The show's obsessed with this plot device, a random woman popping up throughout the season until the final, where she either causes chaos or does nothing depending on the writer's mood. The show has done this so many times, it's basically a cliche of the brand. I can honestly say that I will be very happy to never get a plot beat like this again in the show. You've done it. It's been done to death. Let it rest. That being said, I do think Missy is probably the best of the type arcs in the show, and that's mainly down to the insane watchability of Michelle Gomez's performance. She is just so bloody good in this role, villainous from the off, chewing the scenery and spitting it back out. From her first appearance where she dances around the fountain like a possessed Mary Poppins, you just want to know more. It's a mystery with very little clues, all dependent on that manic performance, and it works. She's great, it's exciting whenever she appears. Like quite a few of the mysterious girl arcs, there are a few times when her appearances do feel quite forced. The main one I can think of is in The Forest of the Night. With no one dying in that story, she's just watching it on what I assume to be BBC iPlayer. It's odd, it feels weird, you just know they put that in there because they wanted to tease the final a little bit more. But nitpicks aside, the wait is worth it because Missy is brilliantly batshit insane in Dark Water. I love when a character's motivations are so difficult to decipher that it's impossible to know what's going to happen next, especially with a villain. I don't even mind the scene where she snogs the Doctor. Both her and Capaldi's performance sell the moment. I used to dislike it, but on rewatch it works. It's fun. I apologise for being boring. Moffat builds up the reveal of Missy's identity incredibly well. It's simple yet effective. It doesn't try too hard, and yet I remember being a teenager watching this for the first time and letting out a stupidly last gasp that startled my sleeping dad beside me. Missy, Mistress, Master. After being sucked off at the end of time, the Master is finally back. Now, I always find the Master an interesting character for the show. It's a character that makes so much sense in terms of lore and world building, and yet sometimes just doesn't grab me. Sometimes I wonder if everything's been done with the Master, this half villainous, half bitterly sad Time Lord. I know some fans think that every incarnation of the Doctor needs a Master. I couldn't disagree more. For me, the Master is a character that should only return if you have a proper original idea for him, if you have something new to add or say. Luckily, Moffat does. Missy is new. Firstly, she's the first female incarnation of the character, which was a big deal at the time and kinda still is now. Because it's interesting that this didn't seem to cause as much of a meltdown for some people as a woman Doctor did. But this was big, but also didn't feel like a forced performative attempt at representation. The Master is now Missy. Deal with it or fuck off. I love that. And of course, the character herself was given a new angle to explore. I'll start by saying that Death in Heaven is not as strong as Dark Water. It has some wonderful moments, but it does definitely encapsulate that messy feeling that sometimes popped up across the season. When Death in Heaven works, it works brilliantly. Kate and Osgood's reintroduction is really lovely, Clara's plot with Danny is great, once again she and the Doctor spend most of the episode apart, which usually allows for a more dynamic story. The Cybermen are quite good. I'm still not a fan of this design, they're too Iron Man inspired for my liking, and I can do without the flying, but they have a good presence throughout. I adore them climbing out of the graves like zombies. That's such a nice visual, and I think they could have even gone further with it. Make them dirtier, muddier, and full on grim. Death in Heaven is definitely more action-packed than Dark Water, and that's probably a good thing. Part 1s are usually full of setup, putting all those pieces in place for them to pay off at the end, so you want to make that build-up feel worth it. Also, it's nice when the two parts have a slightly different feel to them. Tonally, you don't want them to be too separate, otherwise the audience will be confused, but turning up the action for the last episode of the series is never a bad idea. Missy is definitely the strongest part of the episode, and I'm glad the show gave her the time in the spotlight to fully embrace the madness of the character now that her true identity had been revealed. I can see some fans finding her performance a little too much, especially if you're a big lover of the original Master from the classics, but I like this manic witchy style. It's a refreshing take on it, and Michelle Gomez kills it in every scene. The moment where she kills Osgood is one of my favourite moments of the series. It's a shame that its shock is kind of underdone in Series 9, but never mind, that's a story for another day. Clara and Danny's plot is wrapped up pretty nicely. My biggest gripe is that they reveal his face. Look at it, it looks stupid. It looks stupid. This is very much done just so the actor gets their moment in the spotlight, but it's not a great choice for the overall story. Clara hugging an emotionless Cyberman would have been perfect. The face reveal feels naff and also looks pretty crap. It's the one time where the effects take me out, mainly because it could have easily not been shown and would have been far more effective for it. Also, as I haven't mentioned yet, the directing in both parts is wonderful. Rachel Talale, is it Talale? Right, the Queen Rachel just gets this show. She knows how to make the most of it. There's always so much atmosphere, so much darkness and beauty whenever she's behind the camera. She's definitely one of the best directors the show has ever had, and if it was up to me, they'd get her back for every fucking season. The overall series arcs are wrapped up pretty officially. We even get an answer to the whole woman in the shop mystery from Series 7. The soldier plot is nice. It's nice that the Doctor finally respects Danny, even if he still doesn't like him. It's not an overly twee or sickly ending, which I'm always thankful for. The Am I a Good Man arc also comes to an end with the Doctor realising he's just a fucking idiot. It's a great little speech, a nice moment for Capaldi's Doctor, and it's an ending that, although kind of inevitable, I don't think the show was ever going to turn around and be like, yeah, the Doctor's a bad man. It feels earned in the grand scheme of the series. He's been a bastard at times throughout Series 8. He's allowed to smile and be happy here. Also, I just find it very funny that he's doing all this while surrounded by zombie Cybermen. He has no tact, 12, and that's a fun little character trait. Cyberbrig doesn't work. I'm sorry, I don't even really know why. It just feels wrong. It doesn't hit. It's not the emotional send-off that I think the show wants it to be. I find it quite random. Obviously, this two-parter finally reveals why Danny is consumed by guilt. This is handled incredibly well actually, very delicately and respectfully while still not shying away from the real horrors of war. It's another reason I wish I connected with Danny more. I think this would have been so much more impactful. It works, but it doesn't move me in a way that I think the show wants it to. The ending is nice though, and I'm glad Danny stays dead. It would have felt like the ultimate cop-out to bring him back after that great opening twist in Dark Water. There's consequences in this episode. All good stories need them, and Moffat allows this one to really just be. There's no final light-hearted whimsical twist. Danny is dead, and that's just life. And finally, I adore the final meeting between Clara and the Doctor in this. Now, I like Clara in Series 9, however there has always been a part of me that wishes this was her exit from the show, because I think it's brilliant. Beautiful actually, simple but full of heart and raw emotion without ever forcing it. It's just two friends lying to each other to make the other one feel better. It's as complicated as their whole dynamic has been throughout the season, so it's such a wonderful way to end it. The why do you dislike hugs because it's a way to hide your face moment is one, just a great bloody line, and two, so emotive. Look at those eyes. Fuck me, they're sad. Jenna Coleman had a few wobbles when deciding to leave Doctor Who. She didn't know if she was ready to go, and this is why we get so many near exits for Clara. Personally, and this sounds bad, but if I had written an exit this good, I would have said sorry, but you're off. But then, like I said, she's good in Series 9, and the arc of her becoming more and more like the Doctor is also fun, so swings and roundabouts. And that's it. That's Series 8. The Doctor leaves, and Clara walks off. Right, we're nearly there. Before we can wrap up this video and go to the pub, first we must
Step into Christmas.
I'm so sorry for the James Corden jump scare. Last Christmas is fine. I understand why some people love it. Personally, it's just not for me. I think the concept is really good, the dream crabs are great fun, I do like how sinister it all is for a Christmas special, that's nice, a bit of spookiness for Christmas Day is always appreciated. But for the most part, this episode always fails to grip me. I find myself drifting off, always incredibly aware of the hour runtime. It's funny that I previously went on about It Was All a Dream being a fucking hideous thing in fiction when this is literally an hour long It Was All a Dream special, and yet that's not one of the issues I have with it. Perhaps Moffat is just good with the It's a Dream stuff. I just have three main criticisms of the episode. Number one, I don't like most of the characters. I find a lot of the supporting cast incredibly irritating. I know people love Shona, but I find her quite forced. I know there was talk of her becoming a companion at one point, and I'm glad this didn't happen. Also, when I say forced, I don't mean the acting. The actress is really good, it's the character I just don't believe. For me, she and most of the other supporting cast all have the same quippiness that a lot of Moffat characters have. Sometimes this quality works, other times it doesn't, and unfortunately in this episode I find the quips pretty irritating. Sticking with characters for a bit, I don't connect with the Clara Danny stuff. This storyline was done, it ended nicely in Death in Heaven. For me, this is trying a bit too hard to pull on the heartstrings, and due to me not really believing in the relationship in the first place, it doesn't do anything for me. Reason number 2, and this might be controversial, but I think Nick Frost is completely miscast as Father Christmas. This sounds so stupid to say, but I don't believe him. I know that's dumb, we're talking about Santa, but hear me out. For me, I'm incredibly aware of the performance, I can feel it, it doesn't feel natural. And if I'm being really honest, it doesn't feel whimsical. That childlike magic that should come with a character like Father Christmas just isn't there. He's quite blunt, quite moany, grumpy, and although subverting expectations can be fun, I don't think you need to with Santa, especially not in an episode that is already quite dark. I want to feel the magic, the wonder, and the joyful silliness, and yet I just don't. This is odd, but if you take The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe for example, the scene where Father Christmas turns up is just lovely. It's sweet and heartwarming, and it's like, oh my god, it's Father Christmas! This script isn't exactly trying to do anything clever, but it's full of that childlike magic that, for me, Last Christmas, Santa is lacking. And I just can't take it seriously. That's Nick Frost through and through, I can't see past it. That's Nick Frost dressed as a big lobster. I genuinely think, and this might be a bit twee, but hey, it's Christmas. They could have cast one of the old classic Doctors as Father Christmas. Tom Baker, Colin Baker, even Sylvester McCoy would have worked. Not Peter, sorry Peter. That would have immediately added a bit more whimsy to the role. And also don't mention it, not even a sly little nod, just let it be and let the audience look into it if they want to. Also, just write him a little jollier. I don't need him to be off his fucking rocker, but come on Santa, crack a fucking smile please. And number 3, and this feels a little mean, but I just find it a bit boring. Like I said, it doesn't grab me, and that's probably because a lot of the scenes are characters standing around chatting. A lot of talking, far too much talking, with dialogue that just doesn't sing to me. And Moffat is quite good at dialogue, I'm not saying it's bad, there's just a lot of it, and it's not my kind of style. I do love the monsters, I just want more of them. I love Capaldi in this, for some reason the grumpy doctor just suits Christmas, it shouldn't really work, and yet it's perfect. Jenna Coleman is great again in this one. I still wish she left in Death in Heaven. I believe that exit is perfect, but I am glad this wasn't her final goodbye like originally planned. This would be a bit of a weak proper exit in my opinion. And finally, and this isn't a criticism as much as just something that's always confused and irritated me, even though I know it's irrational, but the whole every Christmas is last Christmas makes no bloody sense, however you look at it. If it's saying every Christmas is the last one like that, that's nonsense. I have had many Christmases, most of them in fact, that have been exactly the same. When my dad died, I look back and I have one last Christmas with him, but then the future ones are the same again. Now, is it saying that for someone somewhere it's the last Christmas of something? Perhaps, but that's a bit vague. Is it talking about time? Like last Christmas was last Christmas? Because if that's the case, then, well, yeah, but yesterday was Monday. What's your fucking point? I just don't think it's as moving as people make it out, because once you try and add logic to it, it's nonsense. It sounds lovely, beautifully poetic, but what does it shitting mean? I don't get it. I don't get it. And that's Series 8. So what's the conclusion? I titled this video an underrated mess because for me that perfectly sums it up. Sometimes this series hits highs that many other series fail to reach. Occasionally it's a mixed bag with episodes muddling their way through the naffness and genius, and some episodes are pretty dreadful and yet have some of the best scenes stuffed inside. It's kind of insane and I love it. It's messy, the Clara and Danny relationship isn't as strong as it should be, what with it being such a major story of the season, and yet its ending in the finale two-parter is well worth the journey. Capaldi sometimes gets some insane stuff thrown at him, but for the most part the 12th Doctor's characterisation is incredibly clear and really allows for the creative team to take the character in a new direction not seen yet in the revival years. It has some of the best monsters and some of the most boring and underused. It has some interesting things to say about death and the afterlife, while also telling people to stop taking their pills, listen to the voices and dance in the forest. It looks stunning at times and yet also features some very crap looking CGI wolves. It's incredibly dark and overly silly and completely understands the Monster of the Week format even when the episodes themselves aren't always the great adventure we'd want them to be. But at its core, it has a wonderful Doctor and companion dynamic with some of the greatest chemistry we've ever had on the show, and it makes this series incredibly rewatchable. The Capaldi years have always been interesting to look at as a Doctor Who fan, but also as a writer and someone invested in TV and media. There's no denying that this was the era that first saw a major decrease in viewership, but I would argue that's probably got more to do with Series 7 or Series 9. This series is actually the most traditional season of New Who since Series 5. It follows the formula pretty religiously, minus the mid-season two-parters. So, is it the best series of New Who? No, not in my opinion, but I can see why some people would say it is. It's a really fun ride, and I do believe it's incredibly underrated both in the fandom but also by the general viewing public. I also believe it's like Moffat found his love for the show again after the troubles and stress he had with Series 7. There's just such an obvious joy running through the season. They're trying new things, testing new ideas, and that's just such a fun thing for a show that's been around for over 50 years to be doing. Next time we'll be looking at Series 9, and let's just say I know for certain that some of you aren't going to like me afterwards. See you then.